So every now and again, I like to do sideline projects to keep my mind going. I get bored very easily, sometimes making ammunition, and I'm going back to something I used to do a couple years back with finishing Benelli's for you guys. We've got 9 guns that we work with Benelli to get. We've got some 28 gauges, some 20 gauges, 12 gauges. My job is to take 9 out of the box Benellis and make them really cool. So I used to work with Cerakote on some of my Benelli shotguns, and recently I got involved with my local sheriff's department where I'm a reserve sheriff's deputy, and I get to train with the SWAT team guys on a more regular basis. So my duty rifle that I carry when I'm working part-time, usually I shoot Knight's Armament. That's what I like shooting, but with the expense and rarity of those guns, I don't carry them out in the field. So what I did is I bought a Lewis machine tool, Spec Ward 12.5, and I finished it with a product called Duracoat. So the benefit of Duracoat is you don't need to blast the surface of the gun before you apply the coating. And this is only a few months old, but it was your basic, well, it's not basic, it's an LMT, but it's just a hard anodized, similar to the Benelli receivers. Did a quick wipe down with acetone, and we shot this thing. And after a few thousand rounds of ammo shot down it with training, there's just a little bit of wear here. And the cool thing about Duracoat is they market it as saying it wears in, not wears out. So Cerakote becomes really hard, and you can get chipping and embrittlement. This is more of it's a urethane based coating, so it's a little softer. It's going to be more forgiving. It's going to wear. It's going to end up probably like rubbing or burnishing off, less likely to chip. So it's just going to enhance that overall appearance of the shotguns once everything kind of gets used and abused a little bit. After spending my entire life in a factory, doing lab work, running plating lines, doing functional testing, measurement, analysis, salt spray, I've come to realize that, whenever you can treat the substrate with in a chemical fashion and create chemical bonds, you're going to have a much better end result or end product when it comes to corrosion resistance or durability. If you're able to electroplate, or you're able to anodize, or do something chemically where you're exchanging ions or forming double bonds that are going to end up bonding dissimilar metals to each other. And with the Benellis, the receivers are made out of aluminum that you hard anodize for that durability and corrosion resistance. Unfortunately, when you want to Cerakote something, you have to sandblast all of that durable coating off. Then you're replacing it with ceramic, paint, whatever. It's a mechanical bond that doesn't have that durability that hard anodized does. And likewise with the best finish that's on Benelli's now, that's a PBD. Again, another chemically bonded coating that's creating really, really, really good corrosion resistance. And people want to have their guns look different. They don't want that black gun. They want to have something that's going to blend in more with the environment or make it look cool. So in that line, we decided that it'd be a fun project to try. I've done it with my black rifle that's now done in flat dark earth. And we're going to take these 9 Benellis and give them the treatment that I like to do. We're also going to do the forcing cone. I'm going to polish the bolt carriers and replace the springs with the springs that we like to run. So I don't know how it's going to look. We're going to start tearing into one right now and see how everything goes. All right, so we got brand new in the box. This is a 28 gauge. We'll start with tearing the barrel down. There's a couple tricks that I've learned over the course of all my years owning and tinkering with these things. This one's got a carbon fiber rib. Anyone that's ever tried to remove these, they can be a little bit tricky. So the screw that holds the rib on is held in with thread locker, so it won't want to loosen by itself. But if you end up just taking a little screwdriver, a couple light taps, it backs right out. So then, again, too, bust the choke out. The rib doesn't want to separate out right away. This one does, but I've messed them up by sticking a screwdriver in here and trying to pry them out. But I'll show everyone here. What you can do is I use a leather welding glove. You put it in a vise, hold it ever so gently, and then you can take something with rubber on it. Let's see here, like we'll do this. And then just tap the end of the barrel down, and then it falls right out. Another thing to remember, all these tiny little parts, you can't buy them at the hardware store, and they're expensive and take a while to get from Benelli. So I like taping everything up. Hold it in there for when it's time to put everything back together. Tape. So now we're going to do the forcing cone in this thing. And what I like to do is I get out my gauge pins. This barrel should be right around 540. I'll take my gauge pins and run it down the barrel to find out where it's going to go and not go. So the 542 is too big. 540 passed. 541. So I've got on my forcing cone reamers, these have a little pilot point on it where you'll take a drill bushing, and we've got these that are made in 1,000th increments that are ground down. They're just drill bushings. We take them to my machine shop buddy, and he'll grind them down to whatever OD we want. What this does is it keeps the reamer, the long forcing cone reamer, located off the barrel bore. So it's going to make sure that as you're removing material and opening that forcing cone up, it's running perfectly down the bore of the barrel. So now that we have that, we've got to put a little clip on here to retain this thing, then we can get to work on cleaning up the forcing cone. All set. Cool. Leather welding glove. Put in my vise. I have done these on my lathe, but when you're only doing a handful at a time, it makes more sense to just cut them by hand. It's got a reamer in here. Oil this thing up. Plenty of oil in there. And we'll start going here. The initial bore of the barrel in the chamber is larger than the bore of the barrel naturally because the entire shot shell doesn't go out the barrel, just the column of shot and the wad. So to get the neck down to that barrel bore diameter, you have to have a transition. They call that the forcing cone. So the forcing cone on most shotguns is only about 1 inch long, give or take. And what we do is we take that to about 2 inches long. We don't go super crazy. We're just using different geometry. So from your chamber bore to your barrel bore, instead of it being very steep, it's a little more gentle. So some people say it reduces recoil. I don't really believe that it does. I think it obviously, I know it helps even out pellet distribution, especially with softer shot like bismuth. And you'll end up getting increased pattern percentages. So you're going to pick up more pellets inside the 30-inch circle with a more even distribution. So now that we've cut that a little bit, we're going to pull this reamer out, and we're going to see all of the chips that we've been removing. So then what I'll do is I'm going to clean this guy out, and we're going to take one final cut through it. So the reamer is made of carbide because most barrels nowadays are hard chrome plated for wear resistance and durability. Some people have concerns of us stripping that hard chrome off of the forcing cone, so you are down to the 4140 or 4150 barrel steel. But that stuff is super tough, and there's really no concerns over wearing it out by altering the forcing cone. Take a look, see what we got. Cool. All right, so after we get the reamer run through it, I always like to take a look up towards a light or something bright. You can see that forcing cone, instead of it looking like a tiny little band, is now a lot longer transition. And as long as the machining marks. There's nothing really crazy going on in there, nothing too rough. It's all done, barrel set. All right, so now we'll get down to the gun. A couple things we'll do here. Tear this guy down. We're going to end up taking all these parts and keeping everything separate when it comes time to paint everything. And this guy, oh, we're also going to put Grumpy Duck charging handles on here. Dirk's got those on order from the boys at Grumpy Duck. Sometimes these things are a pain in the butt to pull out. So what I like to do, worst case, is use your leather glove and a vise, clamp it down, and then just pop it right out. That's one easy way. The charging handles on the newer guns are kind of a pain in the butt to remove. So you got to take the bolt apart because we're going to polish this thing up. So in order to tear the bolt down, obviously just push the firing pin in, pull this retaining pin out. That comes out. Then this little guy, head comes out. And then because of that locking mechanism with that ethos bolt, you have to use a little screwdriver or pick to push it out past the retaining spring in there. So here's our bolt. What I like to do is run on a belt sander to clean up some of the forging leftover imperfections. So it's going to be riding on that hard anodizing, smooth as glass. So I'll sand off and flatten and polish out the bottom here, then each side. And then I'll also put a small chamfer for a little bit of draft on the front here and also on the back, just for smoother motion back and forth. But again, this bolt has that best coating on it. You can tell the finish is a little bit shinier black. You can see the color distortion around here. So again, there's no reason to be blasting this stuff off and putting a less durable coating on it. So that's why we're not blasting anything here. Clean it, shoot it. It's all good. So continuing on down to the trigger group, what we'll do here is knock out the pin that holds the trigger group assembly in. Just a little tap here. Pin comes out. And then out comes the trigger group. I'm going to replace the hammer spring with a Wolf XP. Sometimes, unfortunately, more often than not, it's with newer Benellis that have light primer strike issues. So what I like to do is upgrade the hammer spring that has a little bit more tension. And I've yet to have a customer that's had light strikes with a Benelli ever have them after replacing the Wolf spring. So we're going to replace the hammer spring, and then later on we're also going to put the Wolf XP spring inside this 12 gauge. Personally, I use the XP spring, which is a 25% extra power. Same thing with the hammer. I'll run the 12 gauge spring in my 12 gauge, 20 gauge, and 28 gauge. Sometimes with lighter target loads and a brand new spring, you will have issues where it won't cycle, but normally once you get a few hundred rounds down the pipe, these things will work with all Benelli shotguns. So to replace the hammer spring, there's a quick trick that I learned. I used to have to tear these things all the way down to get to the hammer spring, but I learned a couple years ago that you don't need to tear everything down to do that. So the way that we do that is to use like a razor blade or the edge of a knife. Shit, and I just said that thing flying. I've got replacements here. Right here, thank God. We'll keep it in here. I just shot one across the desk. So let me re-illustrate for you guys the importance. Thank goodness I have extra Benelli parts. So use a knife edge or whatever, and this time I'm going to do it right by keeping my thumb under here and just picking this up. Right? Then here's that part. Okay. Then we can pull this guy off. You don't have to. Makes things a little bit easier. That's got a washer on the back side of it. So release it, you put your safety off, then keep your finger on the hammer, release this way, and then all you have to do is just push this pin out a little bit, and you're going to be able to pull this guy back enough to pull your old spring out, and then we will put our new spring in. Spring goes in. The reason why you have to push that pin out is to give room for your shell latch lever to get out of the way. Put the cap on. Hammer down, lock it in. Push this back in. And then take that clip and reinstall. Align it over here and then push it back in. So that's done. That's all it takes to replace your hammer spring. All right. Now we're done. So that gets set aside. Now, one of the things we are going to do is we're going to take the magazine release or bolt release lever out. There are customers that have had issues with some of the some shot shells dropping a second shell. When you fire one, sometimes it'll jam the gun up where it won't keep the second or third shell inside the magazine tube. And what that is just an adjustment that needs to be made on that magazine latch lever. So because we're going to be painting this, we're going to leave the button black. So we're just going to remove this thing. It's a really simple process, but again, you've got to watch the retaining clip because this isn't hardware store stuff that you can get. So the best way I found to remove this is to start by taking a 90-degree pick or something similar and grabbing 2 coils or more of the spring and then twisting it out to remove the spring that's in the gun here. So once he's out, then this magazine lever or the latch is just hanging there. Now, this is the tricky part. Inside the Super Black Eagle 3s and newer Benellis, there's a pin that's held in that this lever pivots around with a small E-ring. So what you have to do is turn that up so you can get a pick into one of those relief holes. You'll see once I get this thing out. And because there's no spring tension on it, as soon as we pull this clip, we'll just shake the gun down. That pin will drop right out. There's no fighting, no pushing, no nothing you have to do. So you always have to remove that spring first. Go in from the back side and then put your thumb over here and out comes that little E-ring right there. So now that that clip is out, again with your tape, so you don't lose this stuff. Then, like I said earlier, just rotate and out comes your pin and out comes your latch. So here's the pin that holds on. You can see that's where that ring goes around. So what I do is wrap this guy up so that ring, that snap ring and pin doesn't go anywhere. Now, the issue guys have with dropping 2 shells out of the magazine tube is just a small geometric issue that really, if you look in close here, this aluminum button that holds the shell in is mating up against, it's pivoting through this steel stamping, but it's landing on this folded steel piece over here. With guys that have the shells slipping by, all you have to do is disassemble this, which consists of pressing this pin out, keeping the spring back there, keeping the pin, and taking a file along this edge right here and just making 2 or 3 passes with a smooth file, nothing crazy, nothing aggressive, something like this, 2 or 3 passes across. And what that will do is by removing metal, it's going to allow this piece to tilt inward down the magazine tube and have greater contact with the rim of the shell. So strip that thing down, 2 or 3 passes on this surface right here where the button matches up to, increase the angle or more contact with the shell, put it back together, you're done. So the only thing that's left is we've got to disassemble the buttstock and removing these chevrons. Believe it or not, this is the biggest pain in the butt with the whole project is pulling these things out, and even worse yet is putting them back in. So the way you do that, remove the buttstock. Then 13 millimeter. Here I put this on a speed handle. Break this loose. That's loose. And everything comes up and out. You've got a washer, your plate, and the nut. Then the shims can go off, and while we're at it, what we're going to do is start putting all this stuff in a bag so we don't lose track of everything. Got our shims, the plate. Good time to get organized. All right. To remove the cheek piece here, there's a little lever in here. Just pull that back, and this guy pops out, and put him in the bag. So now the chevrons. I'll take a more dull pick and insert here, and then you lift out. Then you make a pile of these things, and they're numbered. I think they go 10 to 0. And there's another marking on the back here. I wrote this in pen. On the left side of the stock, they're going to be marked with an S, and on the right side of the stock, they're going to be marked with a D. See if we can't show that here. So yeah, you see number 10 with an S. That's your last one. S is on the left side. And over here, you get your 10 D. 10 with a D. So then all you got to do is just go through, remove all these. And these just go in the bag with all the other loose parts. So now we've got all the stuff that's not going to get painted in a bag. We're going to put it in a box for later on. Okay, so now we're going to start doing all of the masking and prep work. We'll clean everything first. We'll mask off what we don't want to have painted. So we're going to mask off the magazine tube and then the buffer recoil spring tube here. We'll mask off the barrel extension so we don't create any extra interference when this makes contact with the upper receiver cover. And then we will start coating. So now that we got everything ready for paint, what we're going to do real quick while the solvent's dissolving or drying, evaporating, and Ricardo's mixing up paint, we're going to polish this bolt real quick. So again, this is coated with the Benelli Best coating, and all that we're going to do is just smooth the bottoms and the edges, add a little bit of draft on here to help this thing slide like it's on glass. So even though we are blowing through the PVD coating, we are smoothing it up. So I just want this to be able to run smoother. And as long as the future owners of this gun keep oil on that, just a little bit of oil, we're not going to have to worry about corrosion protection because this is a pretty high quality steel that Benelli uses for that bolt carrier. So what I'll do is we'll start here. We're just trying to keep everything nice and even. And we're using 220 grit for this, so it's not super abrasive, but it will still cut relatively quick. See how that cleans up nice. There may be a little bit of pitting left over there that we could probably scratch through a little bit more. We can see it gives a nice, shiny, smooth finish. So we'll repeat the same thing on the bottom and then on the sides. Now we're just going to put a little bit of a chamfer, add a little draft on the leading side of the bolt here, so we don't have the tendency for that bolt to want to dig into the metal. It's going to have like a tip of a ski. It's going to glide a little easier. At least that's my thought. It's always worked for me. A little on the sides here. Flip it over, do the same thing on this side. And we are done. Cool. 8 more to go. There. Then you don't get the rack mark on there.
It's exciting. It's really exciting. I think being able to highlight all the work Brandon does on some of these barrels and all the hang up, the long guns is really interesting. And then this process is fantastic. And I'm really excited to see how the Duracoat comes out.
Duracoat.
Duracoat.
Duracoat?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Necessary distraction is what it is. Sideline project.
It is. We got to keep our brains moving. Hands busy.
Powder coat, Cerakote, and Duracoat in this little thing. My grandfather and father used to have a powder coating line, and we ended up having a powder coating line. And one of the projects we were doing was all the handles for decked. You know, the little handles where we did all those and stamped every single one of them with the black ink, and we developed the process for it. We hung with them for like 4 years, and we're like, hey, we're getting into this ammo thing. We can't do the work anymore. We're gonna help you find a new home for it. So we rehomed it down the road, and now you see those guys all over the internet. Like, we probably would have been doing 10 times what we were doing back then, but if we were doing that, we wouldn't be doing this. What I was told is that we flash cure that at about 150 degrees for 30 minutes. That should fully set that base coat and set us up for putting the top coat of flat black on. So what we'll do is we'll do a mist coat of black, and while that's flash curing, we'll get everything prepped over here with some acetone and some paper towel that we'll use to kind of do that distressing to remove the black and kind of the highlighted areas. It'll kind of sink in the checkered areas. It'll look cool, I think, when it's all done. Then it's just bake it and we should be good. But what I want to do is we're going to assemble the gun and do all the distressing in the black, black and then distressing at the same time. Just so everything's kind of homogeneous as it flows from the upper and lower receiver to the handguard to the buttstock. It's been about 5 minutes or so. It'll start getting, it's not curing, but it's starting to get a little tacky. So then we'll start that acetone wipe now and see how that does. So once that's done, we'll shoot it with a layer of this stuff. What do we have here? Matte clear. Protect everything, and then we'll be finished with the first one. Hopefully. All right, so it's been about a half hour. The clear coat should be dry. Pull this thing out, and we'll put it back together. All right, let's do it up. One of the things I am going to do is replace the recoil spring with the Wolf XP from for the Benelli 12 gauges, even though it's a 28. Like I said earlier, it will cycle just fine so long as you're not using light target loads. And we'll put the factory springs in the box when we send everything out. So we'll just have to do everything back in reverse and start over.
I'm really excited about it. I love the process. I love watching it get done. The creativity Brandon puts into the finish is awesome. And then just somebody being able to take this gun out and enjoy it in the blind, it's going to be amazing. Start to finish process is awesome.
One down, 8 to go.